Exactly. Yes.
But, but you find that.
Time consuming.
And it had nothing to do, he had nothing to do with the
Yeah.
actual event.
Very time consuming.
If you want to do it, you want to do it right.
Mhm. Yeah, mine usually work Friday afternoon at 2:00. They like to do that stuff. Really, I did not want to stay till 7 tonight.
No, I want to get this done. Oh, I want to put a week into it.
Yes, yes.
The only inmates that I got.
So.
That
Only running one.
It's a lot.
Speakers over there. That's what our interference was with our sound. We had two sound systems running.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. I do know what you're saying.
She ended up getting.
Oh, yeah.
They ended up arresting her.
I don't know. She hasn't.
She defeated.
Yes.
She ended up being.
She didn't have to.
Oh.
They paid her. She was I was like, I spent all that time doing,
I do know.
you just bang your head on.
Uh-huh.
These are attached too.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. She was.
Mhm.
It's attached to. So I'll send you a hard copy.
Yep.
Can you do it without having to look at it? All right.
Mhm.
She would.
They're attached to electronically.
But they got her order went in and got her.
Mhm.
Why people are so stupid. and they think
That's
that-
what gets me.
Oh, that, and that's what they put on there.
Mhm.
They got her in a. One of those things that you just shake your head, you shake your head about it.
Exactly.
First one's resolution for 30-day review.
Yep. So we're ready to send out the surveys and start the district review of Ag District 2. So let's open up 30 days review period, start that. Send out the surveys the day the review period is open. Give folks 2 to 3 weeks to reply with the surveys and then dive into the full review.
So we need a resolution for that. Motion. Supervisor Jacoby. Further discussion? In favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Number 2, that one, that seeker.
Yeah. So last October, the board of supervisors held a 30-day public comment period about adopting a short form seeker specific for Ag District review, and that was adopted. Ag Markets came back and said that their lawyers had gone over everything and wanted an MOU between the county and Ag Markets, just an understanding saying that the seeker would be done according to how they want it done in short form. So that has been passed off to the county attorney, and we're hoping to adopt that before we start this review period. That way it's in place for this review.
Every resolution and then.
I think it's already been approved in Munis. It was just an MOU at no cost. So, but but they do want to see a board resolution to approve it.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Kale. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, annual report, stormwater water.
I'm not gonna review everything that's in there, I mean, it's in front of you all, but I think the staff did a great job on this annual report, you know. We get a lot of comments on it, through email and phone calls, so always great to hear that. We had a very busy year in 2021, got a lot of things done. You can see the majority of it right there in the annual report, but I do want to highlight some things coming up for this year. We had a little staff meeting yesterday and we realized that our plates are very full, which is not a bad thing. We got a lot of things to accomplish. As far as projects this year, we're looking at, we pretty much have to complete 5 major manure storages, leachate management project, covered barnyard, hundreds of acres of cover crops throughout the county, and we've got a couple of major stream bank stabilization projects on the line that we are involved with DEC as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on. We're going to incorporate trout habitat in those projects, so those are coming up. Continuing to expand our invasive species management program on Japanese knotweed, that's continuing to expand. And also be working with town highway departments on erosion control for road ditch hydroseeding. So I guess the nearest future, it's kind of it's grant writing season for us as far as agricultural grants go. Right now we have 1 grant application for climate resilient farming, and then 9 grant applications through the Ag Non-Point Source program, which is kind of the steady going program. So through those, through the Ag Non-Point, we're applying for a covered barnyard, 4 silage leachate management systems, 5 waste storages, and a barnyard runoff management system. So we're hopeful that we get a majority of those funded, but quite frankly, this year there's $13 million available for the Ag Non-Point Source program across the state. And, with the increased cost of materials and everything, not anticipating the usual. Typically, there's about 40% of those applications that get funded, and I got a feeling this year it'll be probably less than that, but bring the work in anyway and get it done. So, guess lots to look forward to in 2022. And then, if I could, if Chairman was okay with it, I did see there was another item on the chair's agenda, item number 5.
Yes.
Yes. It is not county owned land. I guess I'm not sure why it was sent to the board of supervisors.
They always are.
Oh, they always are.
Yes, they always are. I think they just have to notify the board that they had this correspondence and this activity occurred.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, either way, we are working with the landowner, Jeff Williams, on this project.
Which I don't think you always do that work with these landowners. Or do you?
It depends on if they call us or not. So,
Maybe that's why you're just, let's do this one.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty regular.
Okay. I prefer to see that well and stuff altogether, but this gentleman, Jeff Williams, to be frank, it's a simple project that's been blown out of proportion because of wetlands being involved. Rules are rules. We're trying to work with the landowner as well as DEC and Army Corps to, the guy just wants to put in a simple little crossing to get across the swamp to get to small portions of his land with 4-wheelers, so. Just so everybody's aware, we are working with the landowner and DEC on this, so.
Because of the wetland, they don't want to put it forward.
Correct.
Start it all.
They don't. I think it's possible that it could happen, but there might be some remediation.
Yeah,
Because of the-
the wetlands, that's all.
Yeah.
ducks are limited.
So,
Did you say every Corps of Engineers is involved too?
because there are not only DEC regulated wetlands, but there's also Army Corps regulated wetlands in the area, so. Yeah,
Civil project.
Well, this guy's following all the rules of fighting for permits or something. But if he just went ahead and did it, you know, he could get fined, something turned in.
I would believe so, yeah, I mean, if somebody turned it in, for sure, there would be some slap hands for that, That means-
What happened, isn't it?
this one?
It's like, yeah.
No, actually, this guy, he came to us and we reached out to, we tried to put a permit in, and DC and our program got hold of us, said, well, we'll pump the brakes. You know, that being said, I do believe that these agencies are also checking aerial photographs from year to year to see if changes have been made within wetlands, so. I don't know. I think brothers always watching, I guess.
Becky?
I just have a question, because you mentioned forest four-wheelers that cross. Wouldn't it do more damage to the wetlands if four-wheelers just went through the wetlands without them crossing?
Yes.
It's probably stop too, but
Yeah.
it would do more damage, it seems like.
Exactly. The trouble that comes with it is when, this is a very simplified and not politically correct answer, but when Army Corps is involved, Army Corps typically doesn't have as big of a deal when you're dredging material from the wetland. They throw their arms up when you want to place fill back into the wetland, whether that's stones, pipe, timbers, so. We're trying to figure out the best route, whether it's a bridge, even so technically it's placing fill back into the wetland, so. Trying to go through the proper process and take care of it first or things.
How about this Crow Creek thing? Where's that at? You have the course.
They are- They are trying to schedule a meeting, I think, for early next week with Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper to coordinate what's gonna happen moving forward. I guess I'll know more after that meeting.
They're trying to put in a new culvert across Crow Creek. And the county highway to do it. And we approved like 140,000, they said that was $50,000 short, we decided we were going to approve it more. And Al described it as a small Quonset building that they want to put in there, this is how large this culvert wants to be, so the fish can swim upstream.
Yeah, I mean, there's a unique population of trout in the stream, is what I'm told. And because of the way that culvert is currently misaligned with the stream bed, there's also an elevation between the outlet and the creek, the fish can't migrate upstream. So I believe it was Fish and Wildlife Service, US Fish and Wildlife Service, or maybe even Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper identified this as a good culvert to replace so that fish can migrate upstream. That's good for everything. But unfortunately, even our local representative at the US Fish and Wildlife Service is frustrated with it because the modeling and engineering for this particular project was done out of Boston, US Fish and Wildlife Office out of Boston, and it got blown way out of proportion, where they said this three-foot culvert that's never allowed water to overtop the road, it actually needs to be it was something ridiculous, like 25-foot culvert or something like that, so. I guess luckily, it's been reduced to, I forget the size, it's still quite large, but. The whole idea is to realign this screw channel so that it's more in line with how it should be, install this culvert so that, so the fish can pass upstream, and at that point, the culvert also becomes a maintenance issue of county highway department rather than the town, so.
I know that was even frustrated because I guess if that Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, they wanted him to work on the easement. Wasn't really up to, then he had some responsibility.
They, Waterkeeper reached out to me, I think, a couple years ago now, when this whole process was kind of getting started, to reach out to landowners about it all, and, yeah, I will say I was frustrated as well, because landowners were, just, they didn't like the idea of people going on their property, which I completely understand, and it took a little bit of convincing, I guess, for it, so. Yeah, a lot of people are relying heavily on the local agencies to do some of the local groundwork on it, so. It's,
They're more than well,
yeah.
okay, anything else for Al?
Thanks for the report, keep up the good work there.
That's right. People over there.
Technicians.
Oh,
Not our kids. Yeah.
Andy.
They're all.
So just have a few quick updates from the last meeting. So I mentioned the last meeting, we're gonna be celebrating our centennial on June 12th. We finalized plans for that event, so that'll be happening from noon to 4 up at the fairgrounds. And so we will be selling, you know, commemorative centennial t-shirts for 4-H. We will be doing, Kelly's Old Timers is gonna provide the music, so there'll be a band. We're gonna do a lunch, we're gonna do some games, and then we're gonna have our 4-H youth, we're thinking about setting up some booths like we would normally do at the youth building, so that people can interact with the clubs while they're up there. So that'll be a really exciting event, we're looking forward to it. Another thing we're looking at in 4-H is something we've seen in the last couple of years, is that we've really struggled to find programming for male youth between the ages of like 9 and 13. So those boys essentially who don't find a home in livestock or, you know, one of our animal-based programs, and, or, you know, if they haven't gone with FFA, it's just sort of this lost group. And so we've started to up our STEM programming a little bit. So recently, Holly Harwood did a soldering program that proved incredibly popular. And we also have these very small, relatively simple robotics kits that we use with the Clover Buds, so some of the younger boys. Both of those were incredibly popular, and all the kids who attended wanted more of that kind of programming. So we're looking at doing more STEM programming in the future, and we're looking at bringing in some various folks from around the county. We have a very popular tractor safety program, and so we're looking at building pieces off of that as well. So if you have any ideas about like STEM programming you'd like to see in county, or that you've seen something cool in one of the school systems that we could replicate, we have some old grant money that we're utilizing for those programs. So feel free to reach out to us, because that's a population we'd really like to grow in the next few years. Because we have, it's probably the politically correct term, some inside boys who don't necessarily want to participate in some of the animal programming, and this is a great way for us to interact with those kids. There's also a lot of state level funding for STEM programming, so the more we can bulk that out, the better. 4-H cookies are due to arrive at the office. We're looking at, I believe, Thursday of next week. The year total revenue for cookie sale was about $44,000. We're looking at an altogether projected total of 45. That is down a little bit from where it was in its heyday, but pretty stable over the last few years, so we're happy to see that. And we're going to be utilizing some of that funding for award strips, which are back on the table. So for those of you who are familiar, 4-H usually takes a variety of award strips that are usually centered around like career exploration, going out to Ithaca, going into Capital Days in Albany. Those programs are all back on the table. We just received word, so all of those will be happening this year. So we're looking at getting kids signed up for those. The one piece that we're a little worried about is that they all have varying COVID requirements, and it tends to be testing related. We do have a ton of free tests at the office with the app, so we're able to test kids, but some of them have very tight turnarounds, so they have to be tested within 24 hours. It's very tricky. So we're excited to be able to send kids back on trips this year. Egg in the classroom programming. So we've steadily picked up egg in the classroom programming over the last couple of years after it sort of plateaued for a bit. We're very excited this year. We actually have egg days planned with Perry, Warsaw, and Attica. Each of those is going to look a little different. So for those of you who were familiar with what happened at Perry last year, We partnered with their FFA and provided basically all-day egg programming in the form of they got to interact with animals, they got to learn about tractor safety, they got to learn about soil health, maybe had stations set up. They're providing, free dairy products and snacks. It was an awesome day for both the school and for us. We're looking at replicating that program at Warsaw and Attica. Warsaw is the one that's going to look a little different because we're actually aiming at slightly older youth, and it's going to be more of a career day. So that's very exciting. We're looking forward to doing that. And it is, or was, Egg Literacy Week. So part of Egg Literacy Week this year was soil health, which is very exciting. That's not something kids are usually excited about. But we got worm bins in the office, and so we handed out worms last week to a bunch of classrooms with some soil. And it's been very, very popular. We're getting lots of questions about the worms. And then a lot of those schools are going to turn around and then keep those worms and create their own compost bins. Very cool. We're very excited about that program. We're about to enter the incubation period for the incubation projects for classrooms, right? So those classrooms that raise chicks. However, there are some complications this year. One is HPAI, i.e. highly pathologic avian influenza, i.e. bird flu, for those of us who are more familiar with that. There have been cases downstate. There have yet to been an influx of cases upstate, so we've been monitoring it. We haven't put too much out there about it yet because we don't want to panic people necessarily about 4-H program birds. But for incubation, we're just being really mindful about where we're sourcing those eggs and being really mindful about educating all of our classrooms about what to look for should it become an issue down the line. Those cases that have been identified thus far downstate have largely been backyard flocks. So not these large commercial operations, but people who have, let's say a couple dozen birds in their backyard, and they're right in the pathway for migration. And so, right, when birds fly overhead, they interact with wild birds, we're off to the races. We're not super concerned, I'll be honest. What we were more concerned about going into the year was swine flu, which looked like it might become an issue. Still might, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't, but bird flu got us first. So we'll see how that impacts everything. We've gone through this before, so we have plans in place. So incubation, we don't think will be super impacted. So we're looking ahead now to our 4-H poultry program, making sure that we're in good stead for the fair, and then also making sure our pheasant program. So for those who don't know, we also have a pheasant program where we raise the chicks and release them into the wild through the DEC. That's obviously another concern. So we are monitoring it. It hasn't yet proven to be a big issue in our part of the state. Let's hope it doesn't become one. Our local team is still working on farmland protection plan surveys, and then Joan has been working with the planning board on the farm worker housing grant. Both of those are moving along very well. You'll all receive a new copy of Farm and Homestead today, which has a bunch of our upcoming workshops. One thing that we've seen in the county, which has been really interesting, is we've seen a major uptick in workshop participation. That's because a lot of people, we think, are taking up sort of more homesteading hobbies or looking into more hobby farming or, trying to grow some more of their own food, canning. We're looking at getting one of our other employees. We have a couple certified in canning and preservation. We get calls every day nearly now about canning, preservation classes, drying, and all of those things. And so we're really looking to bulk up that programming. And in the future, we're looking at doing a lot more workshops. So Don, our ag educators, does a mushroom workshop that has always been popular. Now, the minute we release it, people sign up, and it's basically all signed up for basically within a couple hours. So we're looking at expanding all of those workshops, particularly because what we're seeing is people are diving into, let's say bees is a great example. A lot of people got into keeping bees last year without necessarily making the background knowledge they needed. A lot of those bees died over the winter, and so now they're going to start from scratch. So there's a lot of people coming to us who have jumped into certain things, and now we're trying to figure out, okay, I want to do this, and I want to do it well. So we're going to be bulking up some of that programming, which is great. Other than that, I'm hoping to bring a couple members of the Northwest New York team here for your next Ed Committee meeting to give you some updates. They've done a couple of virtual and hybrid congresses recently, so Corn Congress. We're also looking at doing some cabin programming. It's been interesting. On the one hand, everybody was excited that we didn't have to be on Zoom anymore. On the other hand, a lot of farmers really liked Zoom because it was much easier to fit into their schedules. So they're trying to find that sweet spot, in terms of that hybrid programming. We'll see how that ultimately shakes out. I think the hybrid program is here to stay. So I would anticipate for some, particularly the bigger events, it also lowers the amount those farmers have to pay to participate in some of those events, which is not nothing, especially with what gas costs at the moment. So all of those pieces have come into play. And then I have two final sad but celebratory notes. So Joan Penson, this is probably pretty public at this point, but we were making sure we had all our T's crossed and I's dotted. Joan Penson is officially retiring as the end of April. So yeah, that's a big loss for us. I think everybody thinks that she's lying and is going to come back the next day, but she'll be retiring from both here in CC, Wyoming, and the Northwest New York team. So we are currently in the process of transitioning and looking at our options in terms of replacing Joan's position and what we're going to do with the team. We are going to celebrate her retirement at the Ag Center on April 20th. We had originally planned for that to be a surprise party, but Joan knows too many people, so we couldn't make it a surprise because we have quite an extensive guest list for that. So we'll be doing an afternoon of kind of snacks, and everybody can come see Joan and congratulate her. Everyone will receive an invite. We're working on those. Those should go out pretty soon. And the Northwest team will actually be there that day as well for their monthly meeting. So that should be an exciting celebration. We're looking at our options in terms, it'll be very hard. Joan's irreplaceable. So in terms of her actual role in the team, we're looking at what our options are. Part of Joan's salary is actually paid for by the Northwest team. So that also impacts how we're going to adjust there. So I'll have updates on that over the next couple of months. So we're very sad to see Joan go. And on a final note, I have a little plaque to recognize Jim, who served, if you don't know, Jim served as our previous board rep for over 15 years. So Jim has provided us with a lot of service and dedication over the years. Vanessa joined us for her first board meeting for our year-end finance process, a really riveting meeting to kick out the year.
Right into the deep end.
For those of you who don't know, every year we have to reconcile all of our finances, HR, everything with Cornell, which is I think it's like a 55 document step process. So I'm wrapping that up today. I turned it in today. I'm thrilled. But I wanted to recognize Jim for all of his dedication and service to CCE over the years. So I'll pass that on to you. I'll to you at some point. Hasn't come in the mail yet. Maybe. So that's all I had. If anybody has any questions.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
The Ag classroom, what grade level do you?
So we primarily do elementary age kids up through junior high, and that's because most schools now have an ag educator who's taken over that high school piece. And our funding, which is, so Ag in My Classroom is a statewide program, is usually geared towards that age group. But that doesn't, we sort of smudged the lines a little bit there, particularly at Attica. So if you are familiar, Attica has a very robust ag program in-house. And so we work with everybody at Attica. Here we've kind of crept up a bit. So we have this dairy education grant, which is basically all age groups. So we've been able to do some more upper level programming for that. But primarily, I would say our real sweet spot is like 2nd grade through 6th grade.
You take the cow.
So we take the cow. We will if the weather improves. We don't travel with her in the winter. So our bottle milking cow does have antifreeze. She can be utilized in the winter, but she's a bit of a bear to travel with. So we will be taking her to all the egg days in the spring, and she'll be making her rounds this summer.
You mentioned the chicken poultry business. The fire department had a chicken barbecue on the 19th of March. We ordered the chicken that Monday, and by Sunday or Saturday, chicken was up 30 cents a pound from what we ordered.
We're a little bit nervous because we obviously do a couple events that are chicken barbecues attached, including the Centennial, because the prices keep going up and up. We anticipate that is not going to come down anytime soon, particularly as you know, with poultry, a lot of what they're encouraging different people is to source freight as close to home as you can to avoid contagions in terms of bird flu, and so that also raises costs significantly. So we usually would source our eggs kind of from all over, but even just sourcing the eggs, which are cheap, right? And they're like fertilized eggs are not an expensive product to purchase, even those have gone up significantly. Even funnier is that we just bought a bunch of new incubators for some of the classrooms, and those have gone up 40% in some cases, because everybody's like, well, I'll raise my own chickens so I can get around the cost. Just not as easy as it seems.
You mentioned Joan's retirement, and I said she made a presentation events down there, and I didn't even know it, and she talked about there's the website is Department of Tourism, and you go in there and you put in Kale's Bagel, and it will show you a map how to get there.
Yeah, she's done a lot of great work with the chamber over the years, and it's really nice because if we have somebody ask us, like, so like sometimes we get questions like, where can I go buy maple products, right? And like, you can have maple, you can see Kale's maple, you can see, Merlin maple, you can see them all, and we can direct people where they go, because we do get people who float in from the chamber, who float in from the other offices in the building. It's a really great tool, and that was down to a lot of like Joan collecting those names. One of her projects is to update that before it's really used.
And the other thing, are you poaching our employees?
Poaching our employees, not that I know of, I'd like to.
That Kelsey Holmes was coming from HR, but worked for corporate extensions.
Oh, not our cooperative extension, is she?
She's doing the HR for the Vita County.
Is that part of the shared business network?
Is she working for the Finger Lakes? That's what she's working for. No, so she got hired. So our neighbors, so our region extends, basically Livingston is the border of our region. We include Monroe, but like Livingston, Ontario, Wayne, that part of the state is a separate region, and they are hiring for HR. So no, actually Livingston is poaching. Which, to be fair, we poach their HR, which is why they need one. So it all just rotates around. So no, Kelsey is probably, I had not heard, you have the scoop. I meet with their ED on Friday, so she'll probably tell me about it then, but no, we are not. So one thing I will say is, so we have a really robust shared business network. I'm a little worried because usually by this point we will have received our new MOUs for the new cycle. We're all set. What I'm a little worried at some point is that they're going to try to strongly encourage Finger Lakes to join our region because we're very high functioning. So that could be good or bad. We'll just have to wait and see. Because they've had a lot of turnover. So I think there's some thought that we might be better suited to that. Pros and cons. One thing I should mention is Ag in the Classroom, funny story. So we did a lot of maple programming in the classrooms, which we haven't been able to do as much of in the past. And so our ag engineer Stephanie did a lot of virtual field trips, and the kids got to like ask questions through Zoom and everything. And she went up to Hurley's and they were making mustard with maple, which was very cool. But what they forgot to mention is that it was hot mustard. So Stephanie and the people who were making the mustard were basically crying during the entire video. And like, I don't know that we sold them on maple industry, but it was a very fun day for the kids. They got to try making candy and everything. It was great. So it was pretty funny. So we have the video if anybody wants to see it.
You mentioned some of the programming. Did you ever get into drones?
So the problem with drones, and this is true for 3D printing as well, which is another thing we looked at, is that the technology goes out of date so quickly. So we had drones, I think a couple of years before I came on, and they came with iPads, and then the iPads were like out of date. You know, like the software goes out of date really quickly. But that is something we're really looking into because those have gotten so much cheaper over the years. They used to be very expensive, but it's relatively easy to have a few drone kits now. So that's absolutely something we're looking at, especially because there's a lot of drone, careers in agriculture and everything else. And so we're looking at, how can we fit that in? Because these kids were obsessed with the robotics class, so I think they really take to it.
When you go to Warsaw School, they said it would be like career day, reach out to the soil and water, send those people over, they're young, they're energetic,
Yeah, so we're looking at actually doing more. One thing that's been nice is we're looking at doing some more cross programming with both soil and water. We work together a lot anyway, obviously, but it would be nice to do more on the educational side. So this is the first year soil and water has been able to bring back like the Envirothon in a couple of years. So doing a lot of that stuff with them. And then Aquasane has also been a really great partner. They started redirecting new people. They talk to new farmers a lot. And so they've been coming to us. So all of us are at the table and work at each other's events. We'll see how it goes. Our calendars are all a little different from each other's, but hopefully. Al has a lot of young guys who I can put in the long hours. The younger kids.
Anything else, Patty?
So no major concerns yet with the fowl? Because
No.
we're getting things through the State Fair Association,
So we've got
heads up.
We get it every day. So Holly and I have been monitoring it, and neither of us is panicked yet, just because there was a quick influx of, we had this case. I think they were Dutchess, Nassau, Suffolk, were the 3 counties on the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. And so then it seemed like, oh gosh, this is gonna, but it's kind of plateaued now. I think people addressed it relatively quickly. For those of you who don't know, really what happens when a positive case is identified, particularly a backyard flock, is that backyard flock is
Gone.
eliminated, which we had to explain to a couple families what that meant in some of these press releases. And then they're not allowed to keep birds for, I think it's 1 to 2 months afterwards, and then they're allowed to restock. So I think they addressed it relatively quickly. So the hope is, we also then had a couple hard freezes after that, right? Like a bunch of things happened right after that initial outbreak. It is, I think, increasing in the southern states, so that's a concern moving forward, but it's kind of down to how migration goes, and so we won't really, I think, know for sure whether it's gonna take off until maybe April, early May. We're not yet. I would say we're cautiously optimistic we should be able to have birds at fair. Worst case scenario, we'll certainly be able to have the market birds at fair, because they are dead. So, you know, we're keeping an eye, we're not panicked yet. Initially, it seemed much, like I said, we were actually worried about swine flu, so that, you know, we knew one of them was gonna be an issue, if not both. And bird flu just got here first, but it's largely for New York State, but downstate. And it's largely been backyard flocks. The bigger issue is when it starts to get into those commercial flocks, is that it spreads much more quickly. It's largely been kind of hobbyist. We got an update from, I don't know if it was the DEC or Ag Markets, but somebody sent us like, it's really high in raptors. So, you know, we had falconry, and we might be concerned, but thankfully that's not a program we have in my own county, so no, not yet. Fingers crossed. I mean, worst case scenario, we'd still be able to have the market birds at fair, but right now, we're not yet panicked. That's why we've been really hesitant to send stuff out to the forage families, because we don't want them to panic quite yet. Doesn't seem like it's at that point. Now in 2 weeks, I could be saying something else, but right now, we're not super concerned. Just, I would say the one thing we've been telling people is, Joe, particularly because it's tractor supply chick season, and so suddenly people are there and like, oh, I want chicks, and, you know, or people are swapping birds. I would probably advise against swapping backyard birds, or like, you know, dropping chickens off with friends. We have this out all the time, 4-H, right? Somebody loses a couple chickens and moves a chicken elsewhere. We're recommending against that. I don't know if you can avoid it, just because that's a more likely way to, you know, transmit it. But right now, we're okay. This freeze, as much as we all hated it, I don't think we're things.
Anything else? Thanks for the report.
Thanks, everybody. You'll have new farm and homesteads in your mailboxes along with a new copy of the Northwestern Board report.
Okay, we'll move on to the front page. Justin is here now.
Was that the best? I apologize for being late.
That's all right. We moved on to check about you.
Okay. I don't have a lot to share. Everything's going along pretty well. We just had a huge donation yesterday. I'll be on a Facebook page from Pioneer School honor roll. Over $500 worth of cleaning equipment, or supplies, dog food, some cat food that I'll send to some cat shelters. So it's really nice that they did that, because they collected for like a month. Other than that, things are going good. Our adoptions have been good. We are seeing a little uptick in what they call COVID puppies, dogs that were gotten during the COVID season when everybody was isolated. Now they're coming, you know, getting bigger, not neutered yet, because they couldn't get, according to the things they're telling me, they couldn't get into the vet. And now the dogs are mean or have gone after people. So we have 2 right now at the shelter, and I'm almost certain they will not leave our shelter. So they're just such a risk. One wants to kill everything, the other would if it could. So it's tough. So I hate doing that, but we have to do this sometimes. But I'm hearing from the veterinary clinics and stuff that they're seeing beautiful golden retrievers coming in they can't touch. From families that just meet right off, and some of them not even a year old. Unsocialized, they've not been out meeting people, they've been home. Some are, you know, been creative a lot because people have been working from home. And, and I didn't realize they were calling them COVID dogs, but that's what the vets are calling them. So we're seeing it. I think we're slow in getting them. I think this is going to be the spring, summer, we're gonna see a lot more, but we're just starting to see it. When they recognized this back about November, the vet clinics were, so. Yeah, I feel bad about it. Other than that-
How did the owners feed them, take care of it?
Well, they're just in the house and they just never walk them, so they're not good on a leash. They've never been around another dog. If there've been single people, not around children. So then, you know, you get Scarlet got a 1-year-old, or some of them have been neutered that come in. I mean, thank goodness when we redid the shelter, we put pens that we had the trolley door where you can open it. Because we right now, I'm touching everybody that I don't think is gonna be able to leave. But we've had a few in that I could touch for, you know, you just keep trying and trying, but if I can't put it on a leash, I can't adopt it out, you know? It's just not gonna leave. So these two that are with me right now, one come from Bliss, right down the street from the courthouse, was found with a toy in his mouth. He was one running with a toy, got on a porch, and they had no idea who this dog was, and nobody's claimed it. And he, fence to fence, when you put him on the outside pen, if another dog is on the other side, he would rip the fence apart if I hadn't stopped him to get to the other dog. And he is a, I'm sure, a purebred pet. He's beautiful and he's good with me, but I wouldn't trust him around a kid. The other one is a chocolate lab pit husky, mixed neuter. And he attacked a volunteer's dog yesterday. I was able to get it up, nobody got hurt, but it was out of the room, and it meant business, so. It's the closest I've come to almost be unable to do it myself. There was another guy there between the two of us with a collar while he's trying to attack. He cornered him, and he got loose on one of the other volunteers. And he's usually friendly, he's been walking with a sick dog, so there's just something not right, so they're seeing that. You have to take your time when you're doing chores, you make sure there's nobody around, the building's locked up, you do one at a time, pay attention to the locks. It's just, I really begin into a panic when volunteers come. I have to really monitor, it's tough, but we'll get there. But we're seeing a few of those. We also received a puppy from Perry that was tossed by the guy who's caught on video and interviews. And that dog is leaving probably Friday. So she's another little pet, but she's only three months old. So the guy just got annoyed with her being around his feet, and he picked it up and launched it about 10 feet. And it got caught on the neighbor's video. So they're able to charge him. So I don't know what the charges will be. He goes to court and maybe sometime and he goes back to court. But he was arrested and mugshot and all that. So on the same day, I went up on Perry on Elm Street on a complaint. The family member said there's something going on with a puppy. It got there. The guy, this puppy was starved, and he just found him home. So yeah, we're seeing some. I have to put them out of my mind and just think of the good things, but you know, they're seeing some stuff that are kind of tough to take sometimes. So we also received a dog that had lived 3 months up on Courier's Road, where the woman had passed away, deceased, in the house for over 3 months, and she was found. And that dog only was surviving because the water line, the heat had gone off, propane had gone out, the heat had gone off, and the water pipes broke. And in the bathroom, bubbling out of the ground on a pipe was water. But she was a third her weight. She's put 22 pounds on in 5 weeks, so she just needed food. But when they called me, I had to go in. But some tough. Had a couple, people been deceased and had to go in and get their dogs. And they got to touch the scene because they can't get in because the dog won't let them in. But yeah, just kind of try not to think about it when you close your eyes at night. I wake up like, remembering some of them I had to do. But, yeah. That took a ton of Jay, but I had to plow our driveway to get me in. So. But other than that, we've had some good things, lots of good things. So. You have any questions or anything?
Anything else?
I'm going to some town meetings. They've asked me to come in and talk. So that'll be, I love meeting the town people, the town boards. I know you probably think that's crazy, but I do like them to know what we do and how I can help them if there is. Town clerks are all great to work with. I don't have anybody that's tough to deal with, they're all good, so. You know, we're moving right along. Yeah, I offer it, you know, it's been a while since I showed it, COVID kind of put a kibosh on bakers together, but sure, anytime a town board would like me to come in, it takes about 15 minutes to rip through it, so you're more than welcome to just let me know, if I can work it out, I will. So, yeah. And we are seeing a lot of that, still, you know, but it's not as bad as, you know, the cases we've had to deal with. It's hard to break them out. We do have a new inspector for our shelter. The gal who was inspecting has left. And that's kind of helping a little, communication was poor sometimes. They just couldn't get, if I called Albany, they would get a hold of her, and then she'd get a hold of me. And then sometimes she would answer herself, but it was tough. And you just learn to look at the law and do it yourself anyways. You know, I've done it long enough that I can kind of feel it out until I can talk to somebody. But we haven't been inspected yet. Usually by now we have, but we haven't. They'd like us to do a little more information on our paperwork. But she did tell me, she did take a peek at my stuff and said that we are close to the model of what they'd like to see in other shelters. So just a couple lines. I never, like when I bring a dog in, I don't know if there's a real small line that says, if this dog is not redeemed by such and such a day, can it be adopted, and will it be, and can it be euthanized and have the dates? I've never filled that in because my hope is always they'll get claimed. And because we don't euthanize that much. So I never, but she would like us to fill it. So now we're filling that in. It's kind of hard looking at the calendar because I don't like to look at time limits. I like to give the dog a chance. So, but I'll do that just because they need it. They would like it. It's not required, but they. But they go through and look for cobwebs and open the back of the pickup truck up. Yeah, I'm ready. We're always ready. So. Okay, thank you.
They said resolution, I'm going to do this. Mine's a program here, it's inside of that.
Thank you. So several of us were in the meetings for the resolution to adopt it. First one, of course, I don't think needs any explanation. Supporting a 60-hour work week as opposed to agriculture producers having to pay overtime after 40. The second one, resolution was came up during the meeting, it was brought up by John Becker from Madison County about local input from the towns about, or the county, about citing of these renewable energy projects, namely the solar projects on best farmland in the county, in the town, in the county, in the state. And this resolution was written during the committee, which is, you know, out of order for process for adoption of the association. So we wrote it and went to the resolutions committee. And actually, Dave Lucas, who was the NICEAG staff person meeting resolution, he says, who wrote this? We did, it was kind of old out there. He was our staff guy, he wrote it, so talk about it during the meeting. He goes, it's pretty good. I said, well, we got smart people on it. I gotta tell you though, things being what they are, there was some opposition on the resolutions committee from different people. There were 14 people on that committee. 4 of them voted no on this 40 or 60-hour work week. And they also were questioning this green energy resolution. They voted no on that one. So But it passed 10-4, so it was approved by the entire association. And then the third one, the resolution support new and expanded tax credits, support of food production. And that was a number, so. That one's keeping me honest, but there's always not everybody thinks the same. A lot of variety.
I don't know if we got really in there, and some of the discussion was on the state should back off of this accelerated program to get to renewable energy by 2030. You know, and maybe take a look at how much land is actually available for solar production as compared to how much you got to have. Currently, brownfields, landfills, things like that, or the companies, they don't want to do that. They want to get this nice flat land close to the transmission line with that way.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Or at least expense to build the project, so. Well, anyways, I make a motion to accept these for you.
Okay, we have a motion. Ready for discussion? Resolution? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next thing is the Department of Agriculture's request. Just an FYI, on the county owned forest lands to study the European cherry fruit fly. The European cherry fruit fly taxes in all kinds of trees or just
Cherry trees.
It's a cherry trees.
And there's all kinds of information attached if you wanna, everything you wanted to know and then.
I reviewed it, and yeah, you're right.
Earlier in the year.
It's good. It's good, a lot of information.
And, you know, cherries are pretty valuable wood. And, what I understand, it's fairly set, you know, all the information you want, but basically it just gets going. Destroy the wood trees like it does the elm trees and ash trees, you know.
But they probably need some things in there to detect some of them. They can.
Yeah,
Population,
right.
That was what they talked about a year ago. They had traps to,
They did that with the emerald ash.
Yeah,
they've got these traps that they're putting.
There's some, you know, misunderstanding that some people probably like cherry trees that produce cherries.
right,
That's not it. It's the lumber of the trees that start.
I guess we discussed the letter from the DEC to Mr. Williams. So we'll go back to Valley School Association, the landowner appreciation and drive from chick farming. Or some regions building got May 1st. They also want permission to continue to use the trails around the county property. Do you need a resolution for that?
Just an approval.
We have a motion by Kale, I guess, to approve use of the trails around the county property. Further discussion, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Oh. Okay, grant that permission. I would say didn't have a whole lot to talk about that affair this month. Okay, Rich, talk about Rich.
bridge has been set. I talked to Sandy this morning. Last time I was down, the deck wasn't on yet, but they were working on it. And she said she hadn't been over since nice weather. So she's not sure if they completed that, but we can find out tomorrow, but I think it's got to be close. And then obviously when better weather gets, they're gonna blacktop the approaches to the bridge. We've got to put guardrail in, but
That would be good to get that done.
The old bridge is gone.
the old bridge is sitting in the parking lot, and Jim and I were talking about that. I'm not sure what's up with that.
Was there a plan to?
I'm not sure.
But it says they're probably scrapped.
That's all it's good for.
There's no historic status on it or something.
I don't know what the deal was. I almost, seems like I heard it had to stay there for a certain amount of time, and I don't know what that is. It's part of the overall grant, and maybe that's something Devin would know the answer to. I mean, it's not taking up a huge amount of space anyway, so it might as well sit there as to sit at county highway and be moved twice, et cetera, and all of that. You know, there's no sense in moving it and having it sit at county highway and then move it again.
Would that be something we had to declare surplus or something first?
Could be, yeah.
Hopefully it'll be gone by the time we're.
Would be nice, but again, it makes more sense to leave it sit there than to move it twice and pay for the expense of moving it, in my opinion.
Clean it on, clean it up, truck it.
Yes. Because I don't know, we couldn't move it, so we'd have to contract with somebody to move it. Unless it's already part of the, you know, the overall bid and contract.
Very nice and left.
We must run it out. That's just so pretty.
Probably. I mean, it had a wood deck, so that's gone, obviously, but it would be big enough.
Cut up right there.
Yeah, that's what I say. It might, if it's something where it has to sit there for a period of time, so be it.
Maybe get Franz to go down and clean it up.
I bet he would.
Is the new deck blacktop, it's concrete?
I don't even know. I'm assuming, it can't be blacktop because they wouldn't be blacktopping now.
Yeah.
I'm almost guessing it must be plank again,
That'd be great.
I like the sound of that, like.
you know, because if they're installing it, I don't think they're pouring concrete either.
It was,
You could, but
it had wood on it, but I also think it had some blacktop on it. And then there were some plates on it. I mean, it was a mishmash of. You know, the rubber over.
my understanding is that it's almost entirely new steel.
Yeah.
Very little that they were able to save.
Or recondition.
Or, yeah, however you want to word it, yes. Once they started to sandblast it, they discovered it was in worse shape than they anticipated.
Was it improvement over the old bridge?
It is an improvement, and actually, I like the way it looks. It fits in with the surrounding nicely.
I got a little update on the dairy and Australia's magazine from Pennsylvania Farm Track magazine. And it has USDA class 1 base movement prices in it. And just for example, as of April 21, the price was $15.51. April this year is $24.38, $9.104. That's kind of some of the good news. Corn futures, you know, it's in there. It's about $7.57 for May and $7.34 for July. For selling corn, so it's about 60 cents on basis they take off of that from the market. But consider corn was sold for like $4.50 last fall. If you had a place to store it, keep it, you're gonna make a little money at it. That was kind of the good news. Bad news. Last year, I paid nitrogen was $370 a ton. My quote this year was $625. It's up from that. It's up from that, and the fertilizer I was using was a 19.0. Last year was a 22.14, and that was $494 a ton. The 19.19 was $825 a ton. Almost double. The price of fuel is going to be up, so that $9 for the milk they're going to get, and the $3 more for the corn is not going to go very far.
Just wait for this fall, if the seed company can jump in.
The corn seed seemed to be pretty level. It was sold at last summer.
reason they held it level last year. I'm telling you. They're gonna wail crap out of this year.
Yeah, one of their main things is the fruit on those cherry trees. Did you read it? Did you read it? Yeah, it's not only the lumber, it's the fruit.
Right.
It's the fruits of
High percentage of our nitrogen comes from Russia, doesn't it?
industry.
I know.
If you like cherry, it's starting. And it kind of gives you a history if you read it. I just read a brief about how it came from,
Been through the Port of Hamilton.
was it Asia or whatever, and then it came down through Canada.
Mhm.
The way I understand it.
First founded at Niagara.
Yes, yes.
Because it's 35% tariff.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, there's a lot of information in that little article.
There is.
If you-
He put 35% tariff, I never got over $1,000 for a ton of money.
That's about 200 gallons.
184
It's
to a ton. Nope.
That's gonna cover, if you put, 25 gallons a day there, I mean, you're not gonna get 10 acres for that $1,000.
You're talking about, it says dry,
Dry is just as high, I don't dry.
dry, the same thing.
Yeah, I think dry is a little bit more economical, but once again, I believe most of the dry came from urea came more from Russia.
That's got a big,
But it's
it's a
saying
big, more than nitrogen, not more than.
Ukraine, this, about, it was like 15% of the wheat and corn and barley, I think, or something else. This comes from
Ukraine was a huge revenue up there.
So, but I can tell you this, how much would contract wheat for $10.15 a week?
And it was only, what, like 4 or 5 last year, right?
Well, it was a little over 5, but we got 5.50, and then of course, 90% of it was feed wheat, so they knocked it down $1 or something. Still probably used it, I don't know what they did with it. That's pretty double, but the same way, fertilizer and everything else,
A little more than nitrogen, more than.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's,
your input costs are gonna be up, that's for sure.
they fuel.
Yeah, I don't know, I got food delivery commercials the other day, I got a bill, I don't know what off-road diesel, as you see diesel, you drive down the road for $5.
Yeah.
5.5.
I bought farm freedom paddles for wellness before the Ukraine situation started up at the pavilion, Covington. And year ago, they were probably $18, $20. Now, there's a steel tariff on the base. So the base was like $26, and there's a 60% steel tax or steel tariff on it. So by the time it's done, it's up like $30 for a paddle. It's all steel. I don't know what the tariff or tax is, because I hate to charge it, but we're regulated by the government to do it, so.
Get the farm equipment, we got, well, the farm equipment, but it's a mower for the airports, 3-gang mower. I think we've had an order since last fall, or, October, November, we haven't seen it yet. But the equipment dealers, look like car dealers, not stuff there.
Do you get it?
There was a auction over there in Silver Springs this weekend. And guy had a planet, nice planet, see, I update mine's 30 years old. And before I got done, that guy with his buyer's ring paid $40,000. That's real much.
Okay, well,
Kinsey.
yeah.
I mean, it wasn't raining because the guy that had the auction, the rookies there, he had a fertilizer disc off it, had a new fertilizer disc put on, so he wore a set of fertilizer discs off it.
So how many roll?
6. And look at the tractor house, they were at $25,000 to $26,000. So because if somebody needed it, they probably can't get one, so.
Well, remember upstate and, you know, all the milk companies are going for jugs, but, maple syrup. I ordered it already for next year, and I probably have a couple.
Well,
Order advance.
we can't get vanilla ice cream from Schwann's because
The guy on Wing Street, Marvin, the Amish guy, has a flower shop. He told me a year ago, he was worried about first the cost of the pots that the flowers go in and whether he could get them. I mean, this affects everything. You got
He's got a big greenhouse.
Okay, we got the greenhouses going and, you know, heating them and water, and so this stuff's all ready to go by, you know, Memorial Day or whatever. I don't know, I haven't talked to him since then, but this last fall.
I haven't heard anything about the shit out in the ocean anymore.
Oh, then go down the grocery store.
I think that part is been fixed.
They fixed it because they wanted it out.
Yeah, I see nothing, nobody $75.
It's not an issue.
Yep, it's $75.
Now it's just you can't get it.
Right.
Let's be honest.
Somebody's paid for it. Did you go get it?
I've already sold it, see.
Did you go get it for $75?
Well, small house, yeah.
You know, that delivery probably built into the original cost, ain't that right?
But
So you just add another $75, so they had $75.
yeah, I gotta eat, and then deliver it. I sold you $500 a seat, now it's.
It was in the
I
auditorium.
didn't do that.
You can do it, but you won't be selling any next year, you know? That's how that works. You know?
There's a bunch of environmentalists that talking about the greenhouse gases and they're blaming cows for it, you know. And this article is about, there's most cows are in India, China, and Brazil.
In the world.
In the world, yeah. It tastes like pork.
Yeah, the headline was quit farming on our planet's problems will be solved.
Yeah, because nobody will be able to eat, all that out. And, you know, they go back to what we talked about, I said, downstate, they don't have a care in work farms.
No. That was evident in that resolutions committee, because that's where they were.
They was where they were from.
One of them was from Erie County, let's just put it that way.
Put the sun.
But the most of them were all from down. You knew it when they-
Put the solar panels up and we're all good.
Listen to the senator of the assembly any day, that's exactly what happens every day on the floor of those two houses. They could care less.
It's just like that overtime bill. Where does that overtime bill? Where the people from
Yeah.
overtime, where do they all come from?
The one thing they did talk about in that committee that was kind of like a light bulb to me that I never thought about before, when we're talking about the 60-hour work week. They drove home to New York City because the New York providers won't be able to compete with the New Jersey providers at their green, community markets. And I'm like, oh, so they will feel a little bit of it, but we're still gonna take the impact. They'll just find the New Jersey stuff. What do they care? But, that's the only way they're ever gonna be impacted by the farming is the price of their local community markets. And
That's,
they don't understand the rest of it.
I don't understand. They don't have to understand that.
They don't care to. They literally tell the New York State, the Western New York delegates to sit down. They don't care what we're saying.
As long as the food is sustained, they really don't have what it involves.
They told, some other person from Livingston County, she was debating a bill and they basically said, you'll never understand it. Just go to your leader and have him explain it. And I'm like, so not only do we not matter, we're also not smart enough to have an opinion either. So
No,
it's just gotten horrific.
Okay, there's nothing else for A, that's for adjourned.
I always say it's just like trying.
There's nothing there.
You're never gonna.
I just want to say this, at a meeting with the superintendent.
I'm not talking about everybody, but I'm talking about.
Bunch of children going to water line, village of Tennessee. So
You shouldn't have.
started talking
Which
about electricity
I would
and,
probably side that.
with project, you know,
With
the
everybody,
solar
but
and.
But that's the way,
electric vehicles.
it's the way you're taught, it's the whole hot.
I said, Larry Gilbert, I said, Larry,
Throughout the state.
you're in the electric business, have been for 35 years. How's this gonna work when, you know, and I've said this here before, these rolling blackouts in the summer when it's so hot in Los Angeles and Chicago. And what happens when 1 million people plug their car in at 5 o'clock at night? He said, there's only so much electricity. He goes, these people aren't thinking, you know, I mean, we could sit here and criticize it, but here's a guy who's actually in the business, knows how the power works.
Well, back, 15 years ago, when they were trying to put the windmills in Perry, one of the things was they all were hurrying to get on that grid. Because the grid's like a water pump, it only takes so much, unless they start pulling their head water in.
Or build another line
Yeah.
to handle it. And I don't see that happening right now. Oh, yeah.
That's all they kept saying,
So that's better. America will.
There is money in that infrastructure, but it's
But not near enough.
barely enough, and the utilities don't want it.
That's Sanders.
Or into the program to upgrade our.
His nephew
Our grid when
works for a
we need it.
construction company, they tried out
So
an
how you
electric,
how you build a grid on top of the one we have?
3 hours, the battery's dead.
Yeah, Steve Perkins told us that the other night.
Oh, well, he was in the meeting when he, yeah. So 3 hours, so you send a guy out to, county highway, they run that road, that excavator for 8, 9 hours or 8 hours, whatever they're doing. So 3 hours, what do you do, bring the battery out? What are you gonna charge that battery up out in the middle of the?
Said it took 5 hours to recharge it.
Yeah. And then this is the final one. I talked to a guy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's right. A guy said, I'm gonna buy an electric vehicle as soon as they run Air Force One on electricity. I don't think you see that happen. So we'll see. Anyway.
Did see a charging station. When I went to Florida, I did see one at the hotel.
Really?
What?
At a hotel that we stayed, I see a charging station put in.
Oh, yeah.
I did see one. I see one, yeah. They had one station there.
They went all these solar panels, and when they talk about that in NICEAG, somebody threw it out there, I love that idea. Every parking lot in the world, put solar panels on top of that parking lot. And then you get the parking car underneath it in the shade. No, you just got, all you gotta do is add another 5, 8 feet to the pole, so everybody can drive underneath them.
We had a guy talk to Rotary here a couple weeks ago, there, either Joe, and then Ron, guy talked, him and Sam Gunn working on something, to put solar on top of the champion building down there. And part of that was to put in a covered parking lot, and put solar on that.
You're right with deer.
Are they, is that still a go? I see that in an article in a paper or something.
But this guy, we've been working with Larson engineers for 10 years, he always comes up with all these things like that. All the time he gets there, all of a sudden the funding changes,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We never
yeah.
got anything.
We know what the problems are.
Yeah, we just don't have any answer.
We're gonna do something, so.
This guy, I guess now.
Down south on it, I'm not up here to cold weather.
All I know is we're getting a new warehouse put on work.
I saw that in the paper. That's good news, right?
I think it'll be good news. Eventually, we might not foresee any thing from it, but
On